Madam President, it is 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Deborah. Welcome to the April 28th, 2020 regular meeting of the USD 305 Board of Education. I am Ann Zimmerman, President of the Board. Welcome to all of you who are joining us virtually. If you would like to follow along with the meeting, you can access the agenda packet by going to the district website, www.usd305.com. I now call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United
States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Board Policy BCBI, public participation, states that the board may include a time for public forum and may permit, at the discretion of the board president, public comment during agenda items. At our last meeting, we offered to allow public comment at this meeting, but no one sent us any notice ahead of time that they wish to comment. So during today's meeting, we will not open for comments, but we do encourage patrons to email the board with comments by going to our website, www.usd305.com, and clicking on the Board of Education tab, or give us a call. At this time, each board member will introduce him or herself in alphabetical order. Mark?
Mark Vandre.
Emma?
Emma Doherty.
Jim?
Jim Fletcher.
Scott?
Scott Gardner.
Grant? Gabe?
Gabe Grant.
Dana?
Dana Casso.
And I'm Ann Zimmerman. Thank you. As a reminder to the board members and the superintendent and all other presenters that when speaking, please address yourself by name first. When we vote, I will ask each of you by name to state your vote. The first thing on the agenda is approval of that agenda. Ms. Exline, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, Madam President, we do not.
Then do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam President, this is Dana Casso, and I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
This is Gabe Grant. I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. Any discussion? Then let's vote. Mark?
Mark Vandre, aye.
Emma?
Emma Doherty, aye.
Jim?
Jim Fletcher, aye.
Scott?
Scott Gardner, aye.
Gabe?
Gabe Grant, aye.
Dana?
Dana Casso, aye.
And I, Ann Zimmerman, vote aye. Motion carried, 7-0. Next on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda items, which include the minutes of the April 14, 2020 regular meeting, the personnel report, the treasurer's report, investment report, journal entries, and 2 encumbrance listings, including to Dell in the amount of $242,650 for the purchase of Chromebooks for the 2020 freshman class, and to fulfill additional Chromebook needs. And second, to Paul's Enterprises Incorporated, doing business as refrigeration, heating, and air conditioning for a projected total expense of $50,000 for food service equipment and repairs during the 2020-2021 school year. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam President, this is Mark Vandre. I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, Dana Casso, and I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda items as listed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Mark?
Mark Vandre, aye.
Emma? Emma, we lost Emma. We'll go on down the list and see if Emma comes back. Jim?
Jim Fletcher, aye.
Scott?
Scott Gardner, aye.
Gabe?
Gabe Grant, aye.
Dana?
Dana Casso, aye.
And I, Ann Zimmerman, vote aye. Motion carried 6-0 without Emma. Okay. Next on the agenda is the action agenda, and it starts out with a resolution of the Board of Education's intent to non-renew contracts for probationary teachers for 2020, 2021. And Ms. Wright is going to present to us.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to bring you a recommendation for the non-renewal of the contracts of 2 probationary teachers tonight. These are teachers who are within their first 4 years of teaching, which makes them different a little from the teachers who we addressed last board meeting. This resolution orders the board clerk, should you adopt it, to notify those teachers of the intent to non-renew via regular mail.
Thank you. Hold on a minute. I need to get rid of some of my open applications just because I need to have more bandwidth here. And I'm having a little trouble. Okay. All right. Do I hear a motion on this resolution? Oh,
Madam President, this is Mark Vandray.
Mark.
I move we approve the resolution of the Board of Education's intent to non-renew contracts for probationary teachers for 2020-21.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for an unassigned second. So would somebody second Mark's motion?
Scott Gardner, second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve this resolution. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Mark?
Mark Vandray, aye.
Jim?
Jim Fletcher, aye.
Scott?
Scott Gardner, aye.
Gabe?
Gabe Grant, aye.
Dana?
Dana Costo, aye.
And Ann Zimmerman, I vote aye as well. So motion carried 6-0. I think I will send a text to Emma, see if we can get her back in. Next on the, motion carried 6-0. Next on the agenda is the proposed changes to attendance center boundaries. And that would be Shanna Rector. Is Shanna available? There you are. Yes.
Good evening, everyone. And I am bringing to you the proposed changes to attendance center boundary guidelines. And I talked about this at the April 14th meeting. And so the information that was in the board packet is the same information that you saw when we had it on as the discussion items. So tonight I am going to go ahead and go over a couple of the key items that I wanted to reiterate as before you make your decision. So give me a second and I will go ahead and share my screen. Well, to go ahead and review what we have in the packet, I wanted to kind of point out again that we did do a review of headcount, looking at the enrollment trends over several years. And as we focus on the 2019-2020 headcount, you'll see that we have some buildings that were growing and some buildings that were declining. And the 2 schools that we focused on for this particular presentation tonight is Meadowlark and Oakdale. And if you remember, they share a boundary line. And as we talked about, or as I shared about Meadowlark, Meadowlark has an increasing enrollment and Oakdale has a decreasing enrollment. And as we think through what happens when we start to see a large gap between our largest and smallest schools, as you saw in 2016-17, there was only 62 between the largest and smallest schools. Now we have 163 between the largest and smallest school, which tells us that it's much more difficult to look at resources and to make sure that we have a balanced mechanism within our school district. And so as we looked at that, we wanted to make sure that we were moving forward and thinking through what could we do to help address creating a greater balance. And so that's when we focused on Meadowlark and Oakdale and focused on the fact that they had a shared boundary line. And so tonight, the recommendation is that the USD 305 Board of Education should adjust the boundary between Oakdale and Meadowlark. And so over time, we have seen that change. And so as we move forward, we would like to think through what does that do if we make this boundary change. And so I know I'm moving my screen a little fast, so hopefully I don't give you whiplash there. But let's look at what would happen if there was no boundary change predicting out for next year for our current K-4 students predicting out through grades 1 through 5. We would see that Meadowlark would be at 377 and Oakdale would be at 231, creating a difference of 146, or actually throughout the district, 146 between the largest and smallest schools. If we do the boundary change and all students participate that can go to Oakdale instead of Meadowlark, what we would see is that the Meadowlark numbers would go to 315 and the Oakdale numbers would go to 293, which would create a difference of 58. That again gets us closer to that balance. And so with this recommendation, we also want to make sure that I reiterate the transition plan, because I think it's very important for us to think through what impact that has on our families. And so with our established students and siblings living in the reassigned area, they will be allowed to continue to go to Meadowlark for the duration of their elementary enrollment if their parents and guardians desire. We wanted to make sure that we were giving choice and that we were looking at the preference of those families. And so if the parents and guardians elect to have their children finish elementary school at Meadowlark, the families will be responsible for transportation. Busing to Meadowlark will no longer be provided for students residing within the newly defined Oakdale attendance area beginning in 2020-2021. So that's an important factor for families to consider. And so as we move through this process, we started with a work session. We had the discussion agenda item on April 14th. We did release information to the media, and President Zimmerman spoke to the fact that we did not have any public that had addressed this issue to the board. And so tonight I bring it back as an action agenda item on April 28th. If the board moves forward with this recommendation and they approve this recommendation, then we will move into the action steps for April 29th, which will be mailing letters to the impacted families. We will work with those families and look at what is their family preference. We would like to know that by May 15th. For the families that we don't hear from, we will be reaching out to them, we'll be communicating with them, and really we want to get all the school assignments finalized by May 30th. That allows us to project out what we need to look at for our 2 buildings. And so it is the recommendation tonight that you approve the reorganization plan. And let me go ahead and go to the boundary map, just so that way I bring it back to you as the board and then also back to the public. So let me scroll down to that section. So the proposed district changes, as you can see, we have this large purple area that is going to be Oakdale. I want to remind you that there's much of this area is very low density, and when we think of that as population. So really when you think about the heart of Salina and the Salina area, that's going to be where we have a large number of students. So when you expand this out to look at that old Highway 40 as one of the boundary lines, and then follow the lines of the roads through Meadowlark, you see that we have the Oakdale section in purple and the Meadowlark section in the beige. And so that would be our new boundary lines, and that information is what we're using to identify families that are impacted by this change. And those are the families that we would be notifying if this is approved by the board. What questions do you have?
None from me.
None for me. I feel we've reviewed it. Sonali?
This is Ann. Am I coming through?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I was having big trouble with my microphone. So let's see. Do we have a motion on that already?
Madam President, this is Scott Gardner. I move that we approve the proposed changes to the attendance center boundaries.
Thank you. And do I have a second on that? Oh, Emma, I can't hear you. I can see your mouth moving, so I think we better have someone else make.
Madam President, this is Gabe Grant. I second that motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the proposed changes to the attendance center boundaries. Any other discussion?
I just want to thank the staff for all the work they've done to make this a solid proposal. I think all the variables were appropriately considered.
Thank you, Mark. Any other discussion? If not, let's vote. Mark?
Mark Bandre, aye.
Emma, raise your hand if you want to say aye. Raise your hand because we can't hear you at all. I'm going to take that as a raised hand to vote in favor. Jim?
Jim Fletcher, aye.
Scott?
Scott Gardner, aye.
Gabe?
Gabe Grant, aye.
Dana?
Dana Costo, aye.
And Ann Zimmerman, aye. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. Thank you, Shanna. Then on to the discussion agenda. We're going to start with the proposed textbook adoptions with Tiffany Snyder. Tiffany, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Thank you. I was talking.
Oh, good.
Tonight, I want to provide you with information regarding the textbook selection process and the textbooks that we hope to adopt for school year 2021. Over the last several months, we've had teacher representatives from each of the courses listed on the slide that have engaged in standards review, curriculum work, and textbook reviews. Each group reviewed multiple textbooks in relationship to set criteria. And the review criteria that we utilize is the board policy, which when we look at the board policy for textbook and instructional materials, it must provide an effective education for all students, factual knowledge and appreciation for literary works, and ethical standards. We also wanted to provide practice for students to really develop their abilities in critical thinking and communication, and provide information which will help our students in USC 305 develop an appreciation of American culture, ethnic and racial diversity, and balanced views concerning not just state, but international, national, and local issues and problems. We also want to make sure our textbooks and instructional materials that we adopt are meeting the needs of the special needs population for individuals and groups of students. We also have teachers look at standards and make sure that they are aligned to our curriculum. We want the textbook to have effective instructional strategies, and there are a set of teacher criteria that they look at, which I'll talk briefly about on the next slide. The textbook adoption process really is led by teachers and the teachers that are impacted in each adoption. Teachers worked as a district team to write and revise the curriculum and then evaluate and discuss options. Again, the criteria that they used was the board policy for instructional materials, the alignment to standards, the textbook's use of effective strategies, and the teacher criteria. And when I talk about teacher criteria, that's looking at the organization of content, the layout of the text, and technology components. Once the teachers evaluated the text and they viewed and agreed on a specific text, they wrote a paragraph explaining the rationale for the text recommended for the adoption. Once we received that information from the teachers at both high schools, the School Improvement Office works on gathering quotes from the vendors. And I do want you to know that all of the materials, which includes the recommended text, the teacher review forms, are available for you to review in the School Improvement Office. I'm going to briefly review each text and give you some just a brief rationale of why that text was chosen. One thing I want you to keep in mind is that when you purchase a text, all students at the high school level that are enrolled in that will receive a digital text. Teachers receive a classroom set of the textbook. They also receive any resources that are available with the purchase. And then we order several extra hard copies for special circumstances for students that have IEPs that maybe need a textbook at home, as well as students with 504 plans. For American history, they decided on United States history and geography, and they felt this text was the best option. The pacing in the book matches the curriculum for the class. And what they really appreciated about it is when they look at the board policy and went through that criteria, it really does provide an effective education for all students while helping students develop an appreciation of American culture, ethnic, and racial diversity. They also found that the teaching resources that went along with this textbook adapt for students with special needs and students that speak English as a second language. The textbook for psychology, Thinking About Psychology, the Science of Mind and Behavior, was written to follow the national standards for the teaching of high school psychology, which is the backbone of our psychology curriculum. So this was really a perfect fit. A few highlights of the text that teachers appreciated above what is listed on the slide are that it really does push students to use critical thinking skills. There are many cross-curricular connections throughout the textbook, include information on cultural diversity. It contains current research-based information, and they really appreciated that there are related visuals on every page throughout the textbook. Culinary Essentials. They chose the Guide to Good Food, Nutrition, and Food Preparation. And a few highlights of the text that teachers at Central and South really appreciated were that it is aligned with the state and national standards for family and consumer sciences. It provides basic culinary knowledge and skills for students with little or no culinary experience. It has it continues a current emphasis on food safety and sanitation. And another piece that is new to this, the text that they formerly had, is it has integrated projects that is related to FCCLA, which is Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America. And this is one of our student organizations for career and technical student organizations. So that was a positive. And finally, it has a real world connection because it introduces consumer skills related to practical decision-making for families in the 21st century. Culinary Essential is a prerequisite to the next set of courses that I'm going to talk to, which are culinary menus, culinary professionals, and culinary internships. And the teachers chose the culinary professional. They have used this text in the past, but it has been updated in the 3rd edition because it provides some additional online support materials that really have improved since the last time they adopted a text. Also, they felt that it has, since Culinary Essentials, the course that I talked to prior, is a prereq to this, they felt that the Guide to Good Food, or the Culinary Professional, excuse me, really is an increase in rigor, which offers a challenge for students who are considering culinary as a profession. Both of these textbooks offer digital textbooks and Chromebook compatible, which is always a positive. Nutrition and Wellness chose Nutrition and Wellness for Life, 5th edition. Some of the strengths of the book include the following. It does a really nice job providing ideas and suggestions for reteaching and enrichment. It includes ideas for integrating technology. It promotes communication, reading, and cooperative learning. And this text features some really strong vocabulary that is intertwined and some learning strategies that are intertwined throughout the textbook. Lifespan Human Development chose the second edition of Lifespan Development. This text supports students' application of upper-level critical thinking skills in relationship to physical, cognitive, and social-emotional changes that occur at every stage of development. This text also offers cross-curricular, integrating ELA, writing, even math standards into every chapter, and it has many real-world connections. This teacher also appreciated that there are additional online resources that she had not had in the past to enrich the learning of her students. AP Physics chose the AP edition of Cutnell and Johnson Physics. This text presents the material in a very logical and sequential manner with multiple check your understanding for formative opportunities. This text has a really good balance of the mathematical applications and conceptual examples that enhances student understanding of more complex concepts. In the slide, it talks about some short online lecture videos. There is an additional feature with this new text, which is called Willy Plus. And Willy Plus does offer short lecture videos, and all of the sections of the text are covered within each video, and the videos have questions that can be assigned and graded within Willy Plus, and then it allows for immediate feedback or provides immediate feedback to our students. Medical Investigations shows Simmer DHO Health Science. This textbook has a teacher-friendly layout. It lists chapter objectives. It has reteaching opportunities throughout every chapter. One of the pieces that teachers really appreciated is that it has procedures for active manipulation in the classroom, as well as multiple connections across several curricular areas. It also fits well with some supplemental books that were purchased last year. Entrepreneurship chose Entrepreneurship second edition. The standards for entrepreneurship are intertwined into every chapter. There are essential objectives that are more in depth by providing project ideas with additional review and practice opportunities. The material in this edition is covered in a much more student and teacher-friendly manner. It does a nice job integrating technology, communication, reading, math, and cooperative learning into the everyday learning that takes place in the classroom. It offers ample teacher materials, and it also provides a plethora of ideas and suggestions for reteaching and enrichment. Business Essentials chose Principles of Business, the 9th edition. Teachers at both South and Central chose this text for many reasons. Some of the reasons included that the textbook is supplemented by an online platform called MindTap, which this platform gives students immediate feedback on activities, review, and tests that they are completing. Another major strength of the text and the online platform is that students have access to flashcards for every chapter, study guides, PowerPoints, and there are many other resources. The textbook does a nice job demonstrating an appreciation and respect for racial and cultural diversity in its images and examples throughout the textbook. There are many opportunities to extend learning through writing, reading, and group activities. And it also offers teachers and student resources that will better prepare students to be successful members of the communities after graduation through their enhanced knowledge of business and the world around them. AV Production chose Television Production and Broadcast Journalism. In the process of evaluation and curriculum alignment, the review committee found this text to be well organized, detailed, and accessible to the business students they teach. The text content is coordinated with Common Core standards and it's up to date with industry norms. Advanced Placement Language Composition is actually recommending 2 texts. The first one is Language of Composition, Reading, Writing, Rhetoric, 3rd edition, and 50 Essays, a portable anthology. The first text, the language of composition, this is an updated text that teachers have used in the past. A few additions to this new edition include a chapter on analyzing arguments, expanded and updated visual text, thematic units including money, justice, and pop culture, contemporary selections of nonfiction focusing on the ever-changing world of culture, ethnical and racially diverse society. There's a new section in this text called Conversations that they haven't used before, but it provides opportunities for students to see how sources interact on specific topics. Another piece of this text that is helpful for our AP students is that there are AP practice exams throughout this text, and there's a pacing guide that is aligned with the 2019 changes to the College Board's course framework. This committee also selected 50 essays as a supplemental text for the course. This text is recommended by AP readers and instructors at various advanced placement institutes. This anthology provides a mixture of classic and contemporary readings from a diverse body of writers. Teachers at the high schools have used the third edition for many years and really have been pleased with the opportunity it provides our students to practice reading complex texts that engage in deep critical thinking and writing processes. This update with the contemporary issues will further engage students in class. And the last course is High School ESL, and they chose EDGE, Reading, Writing, Language, and Champion of Ideas program. The teachers decided to adopt EDGE because they have been using this text in the past. It does a fantastic job at developing students' reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills. Additionally, the reading skills that are focused on throughout this textbook closely align with our district's reading curriculum, and the supplemental materials have been strategic in developing the students' English skills. The ESL teachers at both high school would also like to adopt Champions of Ideas. While the EDGE program does a really nice job at developing students' English skills, it really does begin at a higher level of English proficiency. And we really need a curriculum that bridges that gap for our newcomers who are brand new to English. And the Champion of Ideas does this. So teachers at both high schools can start day one of classes in Champion of Ideas and then move through these resources until eventually they're teaching the EDGE and Champion of Ideas simultaneously. The ESL teachers at both high schools teach beginner and intermediate courses and can have students for 2 to 4 years. So having both sets of these curriculum materials gives them a plethora of resources to keep students engaged and learning as they progress through their courses. As you can see, we had a lot of text adoptions at the high school this year. I reviewed them fairly quickly, but like I said, the texts are available for you to review as well as any of the criteria, evaluation sheets that they use, and the rationale, the paragraph of rationale for their recommended text. Do you have any questions for me?
I have a question. You say these are available to us to look at the office, but where?
Yeah, so, and Mrs. Exline, if you want to speak to this, I'd be more than happy if, anybody wants to come in and take a look at these. I could meet you up there and you could come to the office and view the text.
Okay.
What we've done in the past is, and this is Lynn Exline, superintendent. So what we have done in the past is had those available in the school improvement office, just on the counter. And so if you would like to email board members, if you would like to see the texts, email us, and you can email Tiffany directly, and she will schedule a time at your convenience that you could come in and look at those so that we make sure that we are practicing those social distancing guidelines and that we're keeping everybody safe. But we're certainly willing to make those available to you, because this is an important decision, because it is the basis of what our students are learning in their classrooms.
Thank you. And I
So
didn't.
feel free to email me and I'd be happy to set up a time to meet you there anytime, day or night.
Thank you.
Tiffany, I have a question.
Dana?
Yeah.
How often do we replace books? I guess I have no idea how often you normally do that.
So we do have an adoption cycle where, it's a 7-year cycle. And a lot of times it is designed to, when the state is writing new standards or editing their standards, that way, and that's about the same timeline the state does. So it comes around at that time. However, I will say that sometimes, we choose a textbook and, we get several years into it and it maybe doesn't meet the needs of our student population anymore. And we need to look at adopting something sooner rather than waiting. And we will do that if we can.
Madam President, this is Lynn Exline, and I'd like to add to that. One of the challenges that we have encountered is that when you purchase a digital license for access to an online text, most times they sell those in a 6-year cycle. And so there are times where you will see us, and you're not seeing this time, but there are times where you'll see us bring to you a 1-year extension. And we do that in cases where we know there is work at the state level on the standards. And so we know that there may be a shift in what we're expected to teach. But generally that 7-year timeline that Tiffany talked about is what we try to go with. It's the most economical and it provides the best opportunity for teachers to have materials in their hands that meet the standards so that they're not scrambling to supplement.
I will also add, this year we had one instance where a CTE course was up for adoption, but that teacher was brand new. First-year teacher, hadn't taught the course before, and it was just a singleton, and he taught both for South and Central, so he didn't have anybody to work with. And he asked if he could delay the adoption for 1 year because he really felt like he needed to become more familiar with students and the needs and also just gain knowledge for the curriculum. So he'll have the opportunity to adopt next year now that he's had 1 year under his belt.
Thank
This is
you.
Mark Andre. I
Mark.
appreciate the comments you've shared from teachers. It's good to know that the people that are going to be most closely working with these have taken very good, careful time to review the text. So I appreciate that effort. And I also appreciate what Mrs. Exline said, that if we find a year or 2 or 3 down the road that one of these books is no longer meeting the need, that there's the opportunity to have word come forward from teachers so we can review things at that point. Those all make good sense to me.
Yeah, really, I meet with the teachers early on to kind of go over the process so that they are aware of the criteria and what we're looking for. And it's turned over to them at that time, and they really do lead the process because they're the best ones. They're the experts in that area and need to be, having a voice in making that decision.
Thank you. So we will be voting on that in the next meeting. Is that correct, Ms. Snyder?
Yes.
Okay. This is Ann Zimmerman. I keep forgetting to introduce myself. Any other questions for Tiffany Snyder? If not, then we will go on to the next item on the discussion agenda, the addition of high school girls wrestling. Ms. Exline?
Thank you, Madam President. I want to make a recommendation to you on behalf of our USD 305 Athletic Board. And I do have Greg Mehring and Ken Stonebreaker here to answer questions should you have any questions that I can't field. And so they have joined us tonight and are available. I want you to know that this addition really is more of a formality than a real addition. We have had girls wrestling in USD 305 for many, many years. We have a boys wrestling program, and we have had female wrestlers off and on throughout the years participate in wrestling. But what has changed now is that last year, Keisha made the decision, late in the summer, they made the decision that they were going to sanction girls wrestling as a separate event. And as such, there became an opportunity for girls only meets. And so in the past, what would happen is our female wrestlers would go and they would wrestle male wrestlers because there was no opportunity for female only meets. And so now that there are girls only meets, we feel like it just makes sense that we go ahead and formally add girls wrestling as an athletic offering in USD 305, given the chance for our female athletes to participate in both meets and tournaments that are female only. The girls, there are times where girls compete in separate divisions when the meets have that opportunity. And what I mean by that is they may go to a meet where there is a boys division and a girls division, and those are run simultaneously on different mats. But there are also opportunities where the boys go to one location and the girls go to another location, and there is a boys only meet, a girls only meet. Okay, so in bringing this to you, I did go ahead and look at what board policy says, and board policy states that you should consider several factors when determining whether or not you're going to add an athletic offering. And so the first one of those is interest. And we know we have interest. For years, we've had a limited number of females wrestling. This year, we had the most females wrestling that we've ever had because it was the first year that the Kansas State High School Activities Association sanctioned girls wrestling as a separate offering. We had 8 girls participate this year. And we know the second thing that you are to consider is, are there competitive opportunities available? And a year ago, I would have said yes, but no. But now I'm saying to you, yes, there are competitive opportunities available. This year, there were actually 4 separate girls only meets. And we anticipate that those offerings will grow as interest builds. There was also a separate state event. And so as more interest builds, I think we'll see more of those girls only meets. I think you'll also continue to see opportunities where there's a boys division and a girls division at the same meet. The next criteria is the ability of getting a coach. And both of the athletic directors have assured me that if we make this formal addition to our offerings, they have no concerns about that. Our recommendation would be that we would run this as an assistant coach program with the number of girls that we would have participating. And I'll talk to you about that when we get to the handbook. But that the ADs are assuring me that getting a coach, securing a coach should not be a concern. The next area is the Title IX implications. And because this is an addition of a girls sport, which we have a like boys sport already, this would be a positive add in that arena. Cost, the cost associated with this addition would be $3,588. So it is a low cost because we would only be talking about the addition of that assistant coach that I mentioned earlier. We really need that assistant coach, even if we don't formally add this, because of traveling to different locations. In order to be able to wrestle, my understanding is that you have to have a coach at the mat. And so we would need, because of the growing number of different venues for the girls only events, we really need to have an additional coach. So even without us saying we officially have girls wrestling, we really do need to make that add. And we do think that there may be some other cost incurred, additional travel costs as the popularity of girls wrestling increases and the number of events increases. But again, that would be just traveling costs, and those would be done in our USD 305 owned vehicles. The last consideration is facilities. As happened in the 1920 school year, this school year, the girls program would practice with the boys program. And so facilities, we would not be adding facilities. We wouldn't need additional gym space. We could practice within the facilities that we currently have. So with that, I would open up to see if you have any questions for me about the proposal to go ahead and formally add girls wrestling to our athletic offerings.
Does anyone have any questions about this?
This is Mark Bandery. I wonder for Mr. Marion and Mr. Stonebreaker, do you anticipate there might be greater interest with this being formalized? Might we have more people coming out?
Yeah, Mark.
Go ahead, Ken.
Okay, sorry. This is Ken Stonebreaker. I think so. We had pretty limited interest this year, but it was new. I think as we see it grow and we have more people seeing it on TV and the media exposure, that type of stuff, I really do believe that the program is going to grow. And it's a positive for the girls, because those girls that were really interested in wrestling, their opportunity in the past was to wrestle against boys, and that's not necessarily a positive. For some of them, they handled it pretty well, but for others, and it's not necessarily good for the boys either. So I think yes, the answer would be it would grow. And I'd let Greg speak to that too, because he had more girls than we did this year. They've already got a better jump.
Yeah, Greg Marion. I would concur with Mr. Stonebreaker and what he said. We actually had 6 girls participate this year, and started with 6, ended with 6, which was pretty cool from that standpoint. We have had some middle school girls already contact us and are interested in coming out for wrestling. And also when you go to the youth wrestling events and you talk to Bobby Stein, runs the one here in Salina, we do see some girls, more of them starting to participate. So yes, I do believe it will continue to grow. One cool thing, and I'll just share this, we did have 2 girls qualify for state this year, and that was in Salina. And I was able to go over and be a part of that. And one of our girls got runner-up, state runner-up in the heavyweight division. And that was pretty awesome to see that and see the excitement that was brought upon by having their own event. I don't think we would have seen 6 girls out if we did not have girls state being separate from the boys.
Thank you. Any other questions? I guess this is Ann again, Zimmerman, and I don't quite understand how we add wrestling, but we don't make it official. I don't quite, there's some finessing there that I don't quite understand. Do you know what I'm talking about, Ms. Exline?
Well, I think that in the past, we have, because we've had girls want to wrestle and we didn't have girls wrestling officially, and Keisha didn't sanction girls wrestling as a separate athletic activity until this year, we went ahead and just let our girls wrestle. Because in USD 305, we're about opportunities for kids. And so if that was something that a female student was interested in doing, we allowed that to happen and provided support for that to happen. So this, yes, this is kind of an unusual situation that I'm bringing to you. And, for me to say it's a formality only, even without this addition, we would continue the practice of allowing girls to wrestle in our boys program. We just think that it's time to say, yes, we do formally have a girls program. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or discussion from the
I
board?
think maybe just a little more follow-up on that, Ann, too, is these would be separate events. So the girls' teams would be traveling to one event, where the boys' teams might be traveling to another event. And that's probably a more formal difference.
Are there, thank you, Jim. Are there going to be still some joint meets?
This is Ken Stonebreaker. We think so. There will be some that I think will be joint meets, but there will be some that won't. We do wrestle duels against our league schools during the week, and those would all be joint meets. We would run into our troubles would be on the weekend meets. A lot of times on a Saturday, we would go to some different locations. And part of that is if you add a girls tournament already on to a boys tournament, if you've ever been to a wrestling tournament on a Saturday, those things can start at 8 in the morning and not get done till 7 or 8 at night. And that was just with boys wrestling. So if you add girls completely onto that, you could be there even longer. So as a result, they do separate them out. And Greg can probably speak a little bit better to it because his girls went to some tournaments, but part of our issue was we had girls needing to go to a tournament at a different location, but with the number of coaches that we have, and we have varsity and JV, it became a little bit of a challenge to get those girls with a coach to those locations. And I'll let Greg speak to that. I maybe spoke it well, I don't know, but I'll let Greg follow.
You did do a nice job there, Mr. Stonebreaker. You are correct. We did have a couple of events where our varsity boys team was going one direction, our JV boys team went a different direction, and then we had our girls as well. And we had 3 coaches, and that's kind of hard to, have those, if we just kept 3 coaches, having everybody going in the same direction or different directions. When you're talking about a meet when there could be 2 or 3 wrestlers going on at the same time, or at least 2 wrestlers wrestling at one time, to have a coach in that corner, it's kind of hard to do, especially on the varsity level. So yes, it's a challenge, and it's one that I think we can take care of if we can add that coach.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Thank you then. Hearing none, we'll go on to the next section, which is about the 2020-2021 athletic handbook. Ms. Exline?
Okay, thank you very much. I have just a few changes also at the recommendation of the USD 305 Athletic Board to our athletic handbook. Each year about this time of year, we bring the athletic handbook to you and we give you any changes that are recommended. Sometimes those changes are because of policy changes at the High School Activities Association level. And sometimes there are clarifications of just local policy procedures. So the first change that I have is just simply under the organization, and that is section 4, organization B. The wording just needs to be adjusted to reflect the addition of wrestling for high school girls, if you make the decision to do that. And so we went ahead and made that change. At the next meeting, you'll be asked to vote on the girls wrestling program. And then if you do say that we want girls wrestling, this change would be needed. If not, this change would be removed. On page 13, there is a reference to track, and on G track, number 2, middle school. The middle school has combined coaches. They have a combined team, boys and girls. And we, for several years, have had 4 assistant coaches. We have 125 participants at South Middle School last year and 150 at Lakewood. And so it's time for us to formalize that we need 4 assistant coaches, just for safety and for supervision. We've had that pretty much since the beginning of middle school, the middle school track program at the 7th grade level, and we just need to go ahead and make that a formal addition. As you know, athletic board looks at those numbers, and they might add a coach during a season, dependent on numbers, but we don't do a formal addition unless the board makes the decision that we're going to do that. So at this point, we've made that informal decision several years in a row and feel like we need to ask you to just give the nod to make it formal. Also on page 13, it speaks to wrestling, and again, this is contingent on adding the girls wrestling wording. But on I, number 2, high school girls, we would do combined Central and South, and it would be 1 assistant coach to serve both programs. Just because of the numbers right now, we feel like they could practice together and we could handle that with 1 assistant coach. And then on page 24, restricted practice days. We had quite a bit of conversation about this early in the year. It is, with excessive heat, we had quite a few days where it was very, very hot at the beginning of this year. And we talked a bit about policy, and we are wanting to adopt the wording, adopt the Kansas State High School Activities Association heat policy is essentially what this change does. And it says that we will follow the heat acclimatization rules and the recommended excessive heat humidity activity modification policy. And our athletic board's recommendation is that we just adjust our handbook to reflect the expectation to adhere to those rules and recommendations. And that then we would include the excerpts right in our handbook so that our coaches had access to that. But we really feel like that we're having enough really hot days that for us to add some clarity there would be a positive thing for our coaches. And then the final recommendation is on page 26, and that is on the section about eligibility. And as we last year, and it was also late in the year, the Kansas State High School Activities Association changed the student eligibility requirements for this year. And it was a late change, and our athletic board first reviewed those in September of 2019, September of this year. And so at that time, the Salina Board of Education had already acted on our handbook and had already set our local eligibility policies. And so we went ahead this year with the local eligibility policies as they had been set. But we are coming to you now with the recommendation that we make a change. You may not know that in USD 305, there are two kinds of eligibility. One is semester eligibility. And in order to be eligible for the following semester, you have to have passed 5 classes the previous semester. So in the fall, a student has to pass 5 classes, new classes, to be eligible in the spring. In the spring, they have to pass 5 classes to be eligible in the following fall. And so that is semester eligibility. That's what eligibility CASHA has. And I want to talk to you about the change that they've made, but I want to explain to you that USD 305 has another layer of eligibility. We do a biweekly eligibility where every 2 weeks, if a student is not passing 5 of their classes for 2 weeks in a row, the student is not eligible until such time as they're passing 5 of their classes. That allows us to provide extra support for our coaches to swoop in and provide some extra encouragement for students to do well in their academics. So that 2-week eligibility would stay in place. What would change with our recommendation is that a student in 7th grade and in 9th grade would immediately be eligible. And that is the Kansas State High School Activities Association recommendation, that when students enter, no matter what happened, 2nd semester 6th grade, no matter what happened, 2nd semester 8th grade, at the very beginning of the year in 7th grade and 9th grade, a student is eligible. And so essentially, if you approve of this, what will happen is the students will be eligible immediately, and then our own biweekly eligibility will take over. And if 2 weeks in, the student's not doing well academically, the student will be ineligible because of local policy. But what it does is it would allow our incoming 7th graders hope and the ability to participate. And for some students, that is a huge motivator for academic success. And we think that it's really positive for them to have extra adult role models in their lives. And so we would really like to see that happen. And then the same thing would happen at 9th grade. Okay, so that is the change that's on page 26. Our students still, as the semester goes on, would have to be passing 5 of their classes, and they would still have to be students in good standing, representing our school positively, that kind of thing. So do you have questions for me on any of those changes? Or for the athletic directors? They're here, they stayed for this conversation as well.
It's a long presentation there, but all the pieces make sense. It's certainly important for best practices to match up with the handbook, and I have no questions. It all makes sense.
Okay.
Anyone else? That was Mark Bender. Yeah. Hearing none, thank you very much to the athletic directors and to Ms. Exline. And we will work on those next meeting. Next on the agenda is the school board reports and upcoming dates of importance. And I do not have the list here of what upcoming dates of importance there are. Do we have some on the list? I'm sorry.
There, really at this point, things are pretty quiet as far as us having any gatherings. And so there really aren't any dates of importance right now.
Okay, I guess the next one we know is going to be the radio graduations.
Correct.
May on 99.9 KSKG. So let's start. We'll go ahead and go in alphabetical order. So Mark, what do you want to talk about? Anything to report?
Since our last meeting, the Salina Education Foundation Executive Committee did make a decision to hire a new executive director, which has been publicly announced. So it's really exciting that Michael Chambers has taken that role. He and Pam McIntyre are presently doing a nice job working together to doing some transitioning. Michael doesn't officially start until July 1st, but because it's a one-person show, as much time as they can spend transitioning, the better. This was not a reason for the hiring, but one thing that works out nicely is Pam and Michael are literally neighbors. So they have the opportunity later on to connect as well. So I'm really excited about this for Salina Education Foundation. I think it's going to take a whole new level of what really has been a great program already. It's going to take it to that whole new level. So I'm excited about that hire and that direction. Beyond that, my other role is on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and nothing's happening there. From my personal observation, people are doing a nice job social distancing in Salina parks, and let's keep that up for the duration.
Thank you. Emma, do you have a report?
I attended the Smoky Hill. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I attended the Smoky Hill Education meeting.
Oh. Something went wrong.
Okay, are you there again?
Yes.
Okay, alrighty. The Salina, the Smoky Hill Education Service Center is having a chartered associate membership turned in, and that's for them to be members. And then also they're still on for the golf tournament June 1 for a fundraiser. That will depend on the virus and what's happening. And then I didn't know if any of you seen the KASB newsletter that had a recommendation that we send to our legislators, Dr. Marshall, about Roberts and Jerry Moran, E-rate program to help with internet access for Kansas and across the nation. It'll be $2 billion. But anyway, I went on the line and filled that out. It was quick and easy. So that's all. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, do you have a report?
No report.
Thank you. Scott, any report?
No report.
All right. Gabe. Muted?
I unmuted. There we go. Sorry about that. This is Gabe Grant. I attended via Zoom meeting the Central Kansas Cooperative and Education Board of Control meeting on April 15th, along with Dana. There wasn't a ton of decision making on the agenda by that group. Lots of updates on just how continuous learning plans were affecting our special education students, and discussion about changes related to that across the member districts. I don't think anything else to report from that. That's it.
Thank you. Dana?
I just wanted to add a little bit to Mark's comments about the Salina Education Foundation. I too am very excited about Michael Chambers. I think he's going to do a great job. But I also wanted to share that we had quite a few really awesome candidates apply for this job, which to me says the Salina Education Foundation is a place people want to be. And I think that is awesome for all of us to be a part of that and to hear about it, and just know that there were lots of quality people who applied for that job, and we are very blessed for all that. So.
Thank you. I attended the Chamber of Commerce board meeting by Zoom, as did Ms. Exline, and much of the meeting was spent talking about the budget revisions that they're having to make, which reflect the huge hit that COVID-19 has dealt to the Salina economy. The chamber itself has laid off a significant portion of its staff, and these were young, diverse individuals who expected that they had really good, dependable jobs. So it was really sad and frustrating to see how bad it is. And the number of, well, much of the chamber income comes from the fees that come from motels, which I'm forgetting the title of those, but those have plummeted, and they were supposed to get quite a bit from the farm show, and they had to cancel the farm show and return money that they had received. So it was a sad picture at the Chamber of Commerce, which we are hoping can bounce back like the rest of the world pretty soon, but not too soon. Let's see, I also attended an equity webinar where there was much discussion of the solid evidence that the harm done by the pandemic is hitting people of color, especially African Americans, much harder than the Caucasian population in the United States. Finally, I listened to Ms. Exline on the radio to find out what's going on, and I also heard the new podcast by Ms. Exline with JC Murphy, which was a lot of fun to listen to. That's all I have. So we'll go on to the superintendent's report. Ms. Exline?
Thank you, Madam President. I attended many of the same things that those of you on the board have mentioned. We did Zoom with some classrooms and a staff meeting to announce the Teacher of the Years. And Megan Palmer at South Middle School, she's an English teacher. She is one of our Teachers of the Year, and Janae Basinger, who is a Hughesner 5th grade teacher. And so that was fun it's always fun to be able to recognize excellence and what our fabulous staff does. One other thing that I just wanted to bring to your attention is that we do have 3 schools that were recognized by the Kansas State Department of Education with Challenge Awards. And Challenge Awards are for schools that are making notable differences in student achievement, despite having a student population that sometimes has quite a few barriers to learning. And so our schools that were recognized with that award include Cottonwood, Oakdale, and Sunset. And so if you see any teachers from those buildings, tell them congratulations, because they have worked really hard to make sure that their students are learning at high levels. And then the last thing that I wanted to tell you tonight is we are getting ready to roll out a family survey about our continuous learning program. And you know that's what this educational model is being called, that we are currently doing. And we are going to use a program called Thought Exchange to collect data. And Thought Exchange is not something we've used before, but it is a really neat way to collect data in a survey format. There are 3 simple steps. What happens is a question is posed and the person shares their thoughts, their answers to that question. And then after they answer those questions confidentially, they have the ability to read what other people answered and rate them. I really agree with this, or I really disagree with this. And they rate them on a scale from 1 to 5. And so what that does is it allows you to see the comments that are most representative of the survey group come to the surface. And then the last thing is that the people that participate can actually look through and discover what it is that other people are saying and how their thoughts were rated. And so we are going to send out just a 3-question survey. It will go to our staff and to our families to just ask them for some feedback on what's going well. Is there anything that's been innovative that they really hope that we continue? What are there any concerns or questions that they have that they'd like for us to address? And so that will be going out later this week, and we'll be collecting data. We always think there's room to grow, and so it'll be exciting to hear some very direct feedback from the people that are doing the work and our families that are benefiting from the education we provide their students.
Thank you, Ms. Exline. I wanted to ask you, this is Ann, where did you come up with Thought Exchange? How did you find that?
Well, Thought Exchange is a program that the first time that I encountered Thought Exchange, it was at a superintendent's meeting, and they were having us do some collaboration and getting feedback on conversation that we had just had. And it was really interesting because you could see very quickly, okay, here's where we all agree. And then here are these kind of anomaly comments. But so when we thought about doing a Survey Monkey, but what we wanted to do was open-ended, because we really wanted to hear not our prompts of where are you on a 1 to 5 scale on this, but very much just open-ended feedback. We feel like that with as significant a change as we've made, that real open-ended feedback we think will be more valuable to us in determining what do we keep, if out of what we've learned, what's been really effective for our students, and where do we need to shore things up and do a little bit better job. But I've also seen it at some school board meetings. I don't know if any of you have had the chance to use Thought Exchange at one of the school board, Kansas Association of School Board trainings. So, but you'll have a chance soon.
Okay. I'm just curious, nod your head if you've ever used this, any of you board members. Okay. Dana has. All right. I think we are done with our agenda, which means I would entertain, well, before I do that, I just want to say, I think this is our second official Zoom board meeting, and we survived a number of small glitches tonight. So we're learning and growing just like the kids. So do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Madam President, this is Jim Fletcher. I move we adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Scott Gardner, second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. So let's vote. Mark?
Mark Vandry, aye.
Who's next? Is it Emma? Yes. Emma, you're muted. She's raising her hand. Yes. Okay. Jim?
Jim Fletcher, aye.
Scott?
Scott Gardner, aye.
Gabe?
Gabe Grant, aye.
Dana?
Dana Casso, aye.
And I'm Ann Zimmerman. I vote aye. Motion carried. The motion is, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
See you next time.